Thank you very much, Tim. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, by way of introduction, let me just introduce myself and say my name is James Gachagua. I'm the governor of Nyeri County. This is a county in the central part of Kenya with a population of about 800,000 residents. And this system of government that brought in governance is happening for the first time in Kenya. We are actually the first governors as a product of the new constitution that the Kenyans passed in 2010. And again, by way of background to this meeting and this discussion, I do want to say that when we passed the new constitution, one of the provisions that was enormously adopted by Kenyans was to support devolution, especially in activities that are closer to the grassroots, closer to the people. And Kenya is an agricultural country whose mainstay is about 80% agriculture. And therefore, Kenyans voted and agreed that agriculture as a function be devolved to the county governments. Among other functions that were devolved was health and trade. And it is in that context that the new governors now came in and started addressing issues related to agriculture and trade. And fortunately, before I became governor of Nyeri, I used to be a member of parliament. I used to be a member of the National Assembly of Kenya. And that was about 10 years ago. And having come from a county that grows coffee in the National Assembly, I was a member of the Agriculture Committee. And in that capacity as a member of the Agriculture Committee 10 years ago, I attended several forums and meetings at the international coffee organizations in London, 3 years in a row. And therefore, issues of coffee and passion for farmers that's how it started. So that by the time I became governor, I was really conversant with some of the challenges and some of the issues that really need to be ironed out if you are going to maintain and have a sustainable production of coffee in Kenya. And our main problem really, by way of starting point, is production. In 1989, Kenya used to do a whooping 145,000 metric tons. Today, we are doing 40,000 tons. Production has gone down 3 times. And when we came in office, we took up this as a challenge to find out what is happening, how this trend can be reversed, and how we can, put production back where it was, because, as I have said, agriculture is the mainstay of Kenya. And in the county where I come from, it accounts for 80 to 90% of the incomes at the farm level. And when I came in, I set up a task force to look into all these issues and make recommendations on the way forward. In that task force were regulators, the Coffee Board of Kenya, the cooperative societies. We have the 23 of them in the county of Nyeri, the cooperative bank, which is the main financier of all these cooperative societies, and other stakeholders. And the areas of concern at the time were first, and there were a lot of allegations that the milling process was not transparent, and that the farmers were feeling that the losses that were being declared were not correct. And therefore, one of the terms of reference was to look into that issue. The other issue was in the grading system. They felt that after the milling, the grading or giving the coffee profile in terms of AA, ABs, CCs, PBs, and so on, there were a lot of issues around it, and therefore the committee's terms of reference was also to look into that. The other term of reference was to look at the cost of production, how we could bring the production down because it was too high. And also the committee was to look into that. The other term of reference was to look at governance issues at the society level, because we felt that, again, the management at the society levels were not transparent, and there were integrity issues regarding how they were handling the proceeds that the buyers would pass on to the society to pass on to the farmers. And this committee went round and took a lot of views and finally submitted a report to me, which report I went through, and we called again all the stakeholders, took them through the report, and this report was adopted. But we did feel that for this report moving forward to be implemented, we had to again go back to the same farmers themselves, not the management now, but the actual farmers. This was done in a series of 6 to 8 meetings, and about 80 and 90% of the individual farmers went through these recommendations and adopted them for implementation. Now, I have, and I will be able to give a copy of some of the results that we obtained on milling. And these reports indicate for the last 10 years, from the year 2005, 2006, 2007, all the way up to 2013. Just by way of an example, we have the Kango Society, which most of you may be familiar with. We had, in 2005, milling losses of 30%, 29.45%, 2006, 28.97%, 2008, 27.25%, 2009, 28%, 2010, 29%, 2011, 28%, 2012, 28%. 2013, 2014, when the coffee was now milled centrally, it came from 28 to 17.5. So looking across the 2013, 2014, you can see a trend. You can see a definite trend that shows, I think this is an area that really requires looking into. When you come to the profile of the coffee, again, the same factories picked at random across the entire county, you begin to see a percentage of A moving from 7, for instance, Rotuma 18, 28, 25, 7, 23, 4, 19, then 30. And I think you can be able to see the trend between 2013, 2014. This is as a result of what came from that task force. And again, there was a recommendation from the task force that by these societies coming together and procuring inputs together, the costs would reduce drastically, and this would help again improve on the price to the farmer. And last year, we did implement that and sourced our inputs directly, the fertilizers, and we were able to move from a total of 2,000 in Kenya shillings, 500 per bag, to about 1,900 shillings per bag, which is about 20 to 25% reduction. And therefore, it was an indication that some of these recommendations were actually working. The other key area that even as we read those reports and obtained those figures was that we were to look into what was contributing to the very, very, very low prices that we were getting, despite the fact that 70% of the coffee from Nyeri County is actually high-quality coffee. It's actually specialty coffee, which most of you in this room are actually what you deal with. And we did look into all areas that influence price. And one of the issues that came out is that currently coffee is marketed through marketing agents. These agents are licensed by the Coffee Board of Kenya, who are the regulators. And it provides that in a marketing agreement, the marketing agent is entitled to 2% of the sale of the coffee. Another deduction that is made from the sales is a 2% that goes to the Coffee Research Foundation so that there is research available to the farmers in terms of improving quality and so on. There is a further 2% that goes for the maintenance of roads in the farm areas. So you are looking at about 6% as a statutory deduction that must be taken out from the coffee sales. Of course, the other allowance is that in between the factories and the port of Mombasa, there are costs associated with transportation, and then maybe a further allowance from Mombasa to America or the Europe or wherever the coffee is going, which again works to a certain figure per pound. And allowing all that, there was an issue of a bit of disconnect between the figures that the farmers were getting and what we do know are the prices. And again, we have a schedule of prices here. We have a schedule of prices that is in a raw form. We have all the 23 societies and the prices that reach the farmer in terms of the pound per cherry for the last 10 years from the 2004 to date. And this is a summary of all that raw data, which I think can be available to the members for perusal. But the net effect is that in 2004, the average price, the highest price per pound of cherry in US dollars was 16 cents, and the lowest was 6 cents to the dollar. In 2005, the highest was 18 cents, the lowest was 7, and average was 12. And it's ranging between 11 and 27, and that is what the farmer has been getting. And we felt that perhaps this US cents per pound of very high quality coffee may be one of the reasons that is contributing to the decline and the loss of interest in farmers continuing to grow coffee. In 2011, farmers did get 40 cents per pound, and I think that from the calculations that we have done is closer to what we think may be the figure that would make the growing of coffee by these farmers sustainable. And we have worked out an example which will give you to just see how we are seeing this scenario. And we are saying, for instance, if you took a figure of 4 pounds per pound of coffee, high quality coffee, this works out at 66 cents per pound of sherry. That is $4 per pound of clean coffee, working out at 66 cents per pound of sherry. If you took out costs associated with transportation to the port and so on, works out at about 17 cents to the pound. If you took out statutory charges of about 6%, the one that I have just outlined, per pound, leaves you with a net of 46 cents to the pound. And if you took out now the factory expenses, this is another area that the committee established farmers who are losing money by the management in the coffee societies taking a very, very, very high percentage as operating expenses. They were taking a whooping 20%. But the report of the committee is that in a well-managed factory or society, we can come down to as far as 6%. And if you took 6%, because that is doable, and we have established that is actually the operating level, that will bring you to about 0.94. And we are saying that we do appreciate that for this industry to prosper and work, there are linkages, there are market linkages that would not necessarily be captured by the statutory deductions. So that even as we allow for 2% for the agent, there are the linkages that are there and that have to be costed. And therefore we are saying, even if we allowed a 15% for that linkage, after allowing all these costs, you would still be able to leave the farmer with 36 cents to the pound. And 36 cents to the pound translates in Kenya to 70 shillings per kilo, because that is the language that the Kenyans understand. They deal with kilos. That is 36 cents to the pound. And the basis of all that is that in terms of the recommendation and the implementation of the report, the law currently states that the agreement between the marketing agent and the society requires that the price for which the coffee has been sold must be declared, not just to the farmer, but also to the Coffee Board of Kenya, who is the regulator. And unfortunately, this has not been happening. I think the declarations to the Coffee Board of Kenya have been happening because that is statutory, but the declaration to the societies have not been happening. And I think this has opened a window for governance around that issue and integrity issues around the management that has been elected by farmers and so on. And therefore, this is one of the areas that we feel, if addressed, it may contribute significantly to better returns to the farmer. And our feeling and discussions, even with the millers and the marketers in Kenya, because we have had 2 or 3 discussions, is that they are not opposed to that declaration. They are not opposed to that openness. They are not opposed to that transparency of declaration of price. Because if that happens, combined with the measures that we are taking to improve governance at the society level, we do feel that we can achieve 36 cents to the pound, and that would, in our view, make the growing of coffee at the farm level sustainable. Now, moving on, I now want to go on to say that once this report was adopted and the farmers declared that they want to adopt this system of selling their coffee, with hindsight, I want to admit that perhaps if we had consulted more with the players themselves, the marketers and the agents, we could have improved this system much better and made it much tidier, because their input in terms of actually what happens was also critical to ensuring that this coffee is available and gets to the end buyers. But we'll discuss that a little later. But be as it may, from the report itself that was adopted by us and the farmers, we have now agreed that moving forward, to address the issues that were raised and that came out of this report, it will be necessary in the future to ensure that the milling and the grading is transparent. And this is something that, in our view, we need to do together. We need to agree with all the millers and the agents on the modalities of how this is going to be done, so that the farmers' representatives are represented, the county government is having an oversight, and the miller himself is represented. And once we do that together, then that will clear that area, and that will also address the milling, the grading profile, so that we are sure that we are dealing with a product of what it actually is, because the price, the end price, is actually dictated to a very large extent by the grading profile. The other measure that we have decided that we must adopt internally now in terms of governance is that we are going to scale down the operations at the Coffee Society, so that currently they have 10 members representing farmers. And their basic function is just marketing, and it is our view, and the members are in agreement, that you don't require 10 members taking stipends and allowances, from societies that are so small and have very little coffee, and therefore we want to reduce that to about 3. We want to reduce a lot of areas in terms of the factories and societies. And as I said a little earlier, we can go to as low as 6%. And that will help in bringing up the price a little higher. We have adopted also that policy that, again, moving forward to take advantage of economies of scale, we will be, as much as possible, be trying to procure our inputs together. And that should also bring the cost significantly lower. Currently, the Kenya government is subsidizing farmers. We are today being able to procure fertilizers for coffee at 50% below the market price. And together, again, this is a major input in terms of bringing the cost down. For purposes of the people in this room and the relevance of this presentation, it is that if it is in our interest that we do continue to have a sustainable coffee production in Kenya, and that we do maintain the same qualities that we have been giving to our end buyers, our wish is that we discuss freely, we discuss openly some of these changes, and see whether their adoption or their implementation and their impact actually on the future of the coffee industry in Kenya. And it is my belief that if we can agree that as the contract provides, there is provision for disclosure of the end price, I think that will go a long way in addressing this issue. If we also do agree that there is need for societies to be represented in the milling and the grading of coffee, just again to allow transparency and accountability in terms of obligations to the coffee societies that have signed contracts with the particular millers, I think these two measures alone will go a long way in ensuring that what gets back to the farmer is attractive and is sustainable, and that this will, in my view, spur production. And I think this is really the purpose of this discussion. Now, as I said, when these measures were implemented abruptly, it did disrupt certain arrangements that were there, certain contracts that were signed between the marketers and the societies. And we did engage the millers and the marketers into a meeting where we sat down and we gave them assurance that as a county government, we would ensure that there are no losses that will accrue to them, and that immediately this coffee is sold, we will be able to undertake that any money that they had lent to the farmers, that they had input in one way or the other, would actually be refunded. And just to give them comfort, we did arrange a meeting with national government and issued a joint statement that was signed between us and the marketers and the national government. We have a copy here for purposes of seeing what was agreed, and it did touch on all those points. That this initiative is really meant to improve the incomes for the farmers, and it takes note that there were prior commitments by millers and marketers, which the government is willing to respect and to ensure that it is done, and that moving forward, we are now in agreement that because these are measures, some of the measures that we have talked about are measures that are going to be implemented not just in the county of Nyeri, but in the entire country, because discussions have been held between the various counties that grow coffee. And again, this is a statement signed by the governors of the various counties that are growing coffee. This is Nyeri, this is Kiambu, this is Murang'a and Kirinyaga, and the governor of Meru. Since then, counties like Migori, Bungoma, Machakos, and so on have also come on board in terms of adopting the measures that we talk about, in terms of what we need to do to ensure that there's transparency in all these areas. And in conclusion, what we are actually saying is that it is our hope and belief that if properly explained and taking questions to address various concerns, it is our conviction that if these measures are adopted, not only are we going to have more production and more productivity, but this is likely to be a win-win situation for everyone. And I also did not mention, and I think I should at this point, that in the year 2006, 2007, certain changes were made to the law to open direct sales under the Coffee 2001 Act in the National Assembly. However, that window has never worked properly. And I think some of the reasons why that window has not worked are some of the issues that were the subject of this report. And it is our view that if we now open it up so that you are able to come to the societies, access coffee, have it milled in a transparent manner, have a declaration of price, and so on, take out the statutory reductions that are required by law, and pass on the balance of the price, it is our view that production will go up and this industry will really be stable. It is not, and I want to emphasize, it is not our intention as a government of Nyeri or as a county government to get involved in the nitty-gritties of trading and buying of coffee. Ours is really governance. It is actually to ensure that the farmer gets the maximum possible price. And from there, we just let the forces of supply and demand take effect. And to demonstrate this, because there was a lot of propaganda that the government of Nyeri is involving itself in trading of coffee and so on, and this is actually not true. About 5-6 days ago, because we are now actually talking and discussing with the millers and the marketers in Kenya in relation to what has happened, we did agree that we move together. And about 5-6 days ago, I did get a call from CMS, who are some of the agents dealing with the coffee societies in Nyeri, because they had a buyer for coffee from Tiriku, which was still at the society and was about to be delivered to where the other coffee is being milled. And we did agree, because this coffee has a good buyer, the price is good, and there is a requirement that this coffee be rainforest certified. We said, no problem. Take the coffee, mill it at the rainforest certified mill, sell it, and pass on the price to the farmer. In other words, what we are saying is, even if there were hiccups along the way as we try to implement this, we want to smoothen that and moving forward agree on the way to go. And that is why we are saying that we do have the details of all these coffees that are available by way of traceability, origin, and where it comes from. And I think most of these wet mills, you know them. And this coffee is available. Some of it may still be at the mill, and this coffee can be accessed directly from that society where it is now, in accordance with the arrangement that was there and has been in practice before. There is coffee that is in KCC, which is a mill that is owned by the farmers. Again, we are saying, if you want to access this coffee, we'll make it possible, either for you to sign a contract with KCC, and then you can do the logistics on behalf of your head buyer, as you have been doing in the past, or indeed, if you want to do it directly, we will facilitate it. This is important because moving forward, we want to ensure that the farmers are able to get the benefit of the proceeds of their coffee, and that next season, with these new measures, we can get even more production. And therefore, I just want to perhaps pause there and maybe clarify any issue that you feel that I need to clarify.